I do believe that this opportunity also presents a historic challenge to us. Parliament is the ultimate law-making authority on this issue as far as India is concerned. Movements outside the Parliament are all intended to convey public opinion and the intensity of that public opinion to us. And that message, which is coming to all of us from different parts of the country today, could not be louder and clearer. And the loud and clear message today is that the country is expecting the Parliament to perform its historic obligation and duty, its commitment to the people, and take effective steps so that we are able to substantially tackle the problem of corruption, if not eliminate it altogether in India. So while we do so, we must also have the honesty of purpose to really analyze where we have gone wrong. And when I say where we have gone wrong, I don't want to sound partisan. Where is the activity, both political and economic, as far as this country is concerned? Which are the challenges which are presented before us? Today, sir, there is a serious crisis of credibility. There is an erosion as far as the credibility of governance in some places is concerned. People are losing faith that the normal mechanisms which we have put in place will be adequate and sufficient to tackle the menace of corruption. Therefore, it is extremely important that we introspect honestly and introspect seriously. Our introspection must lead us to accept what is truthfully the situation on the ground. We should intend to restore the credibility of governance, raise the bar of accountability, and provide for deterrence so that those who indulge in these unacceptable activities, whether they are in the bureaucracy or they are in public life or they are in any other sphere of governance, do not get away after committing such heinous crimes against the society. So I had originally thought, when I was initially learning my initial lessons in politics, that there are too many controls and regulations which the government had. And we thought when liberalization sets in and we have de-licensing taking place, freedom from controls taking place, the role of government and the intrusion of government into various areas will come to an end or will substantially decline. And once that happens, you'll probably have a much cleaner society as far as corruption is concerned. So I must confess that this was an honest belief that even I shared. Of course, this had its own advantages. De-licensing meant, freedom from controls meant that people wanting to undertake economic activity did not have to move around in the corridors of power. To that extent, we took a step forward. But as we progressed, sir, we saw that when we unleashed these larger avenues of economic activity, we suddenly found that new areas and much bigger areas as far as corruption and graft are concerned suddenly started emerging. They got decentralized. And let's take, and I intend to place before the House, and I shall endeavor at least in that part of what I wish to say to be as non-partisan as possible, though there are some observations I have to make about the present government a little later. Let us look at what has happened across the country. Today, if we look around, irrespective of which party governs which part of India, land itself has become one major area of corruption. For any economic activity, be it housing, be it industry, be it institutional user, people need land. Therefore, acquisition of land, which is the land intended to be acquired, Which is the land intended to be released from acquisition? Which is the land whose alignment of some highway or road must be changed so that some land comes on the main highway itself? That increases the value of land. The conversion of land user. The clearance of layout plans for townships. Now, all this from top to bottom. And we have now gone to the extent of saying that if you have an urban project which is more than 50 crores, and land being very costly, most projects would be more than 50 crores, it will also require an environmental clearance from the central government. At least there was one stage some years ago, not recently, where literally thousands of files used to be pending with the central government because that environmental clearance is to be required because one building in some part of the country has to be constructed. So at different levels, the kind of discretions we brought in, we suddenly found that all these activities became almost a handmaiden for various kinds of discretions. And since a large amount of money was involved in this, these became central areas for corruption. Mining. Now let us look at the kind of system we have. Originally, we never thought that there would be an ability to make money if you go underground or if you go underwater into the sea for oil and gas, underground for mining, or even if you go into the space as far as spectrum is concerned. Now, as we have progressed, we have suddenly found that these areas, to those who had wicked intentions, provided a great opportunity. In mining, sir, except for a mere amount of royalty and some taxes, the state gets almost next to nothing. And there is a transfer of natural wealth into private hands. You want to be partisan? I'll come to that.
No, please.
And suddenly we found a situation that not only is it a transfer of huge amount of wealth into private hands, our policy, sir, and I've said this in this house earlier, first come, first serve, first application, these were all intended to benefit not actual users but those who could trade in them. Some states now have altered that policy and want only licenses to be given to those who will actually create jobs and value addition in those areas. There's a serious case for rethinking that whole policy and how much those people pay, how much is the revenue, and I'm told the mining law amendment is also being proposed, whereby some amount of money to be realized is to be spent for the development of the local region itself. But over the years, that was the second area which became. I refer to the third area, and these were all areas which we had not even conceived of 20 years ago, where we found that even through airwaves, and what was spectrum ultimately? It was a scarce resource, it was a limited resource, and therefore, by following a policy in which you say, I want to give it to the actual user has deep pockets, he could afford to pay more, but on some proposal or the other, we had a discretionary policy, we decided to underprice it, and therefore by underpricing it, we realized that there were people who were ready to make money out of them. Oil and gas. These were again areas where people went underwater, under the sea, and you found huge amounts of revenues again, and these are all national assets. And therefore, in order to get these national assets, who are the people who will get them? Whether it's spectrum, it's these assets, or it's mining, or for that matter, any other kind of largesse that the state gave. So the state, on behalf of the people, was holding these largesse, ports and highways. So in each contract, the terms can be so drafted so that while drafting the terms of the tender, you originally know who the eventual successful party is going to be. Now, these are all areas where we realize that we have started seriously compromising. So we also have reached a stage, and I must clarify, I am not an opponent of that whole idea of the society, the private sector, the non-governmental organizations, charitable trusts, getting into the field of education, from school education to higher education. Some of them have made a commendable contribution. But then in areas where there was a scarcity created in terms of seats, and we know the states where this is happening, unthinkable amounts as capitation fee for a single undergraduate or postgraduate medical seat, because we've decided to create scarcity of seats. Wherever the scarcity got over, the capitation fees disappeared. But wherever we created scarcities, so we found this became a major area as far as black money is concerned. Liquor, the way the tenders are given in some of the states, the way they are concentrated in limited hands. So these are all areas where we found that the extent of economic activity and its expansion, the average person found that it was beyond his reach, and we led to a concentration of wealth in certain hands who could then run and administer the whole system. As far as the average citizen is concerned, let us look at what's the plight of our revenue departments. Custom, excise, taxes, municipal taxes. Whoever has to go to these authorities, and when we hear people on television these days amongst the protesters, it is these grievances which has compelled them all to come out and say, well, we've ultimately found a voice and therefore we must speak out as far as these issues are concerned. Municipalities, rationing, licensing, transport departments of various governments. These are all areas where we suddenly found over the years it had become an accepted norm that a corrupt practice would prevail, and without a citizen going through that route, it was very difficult to get his papers or his file or his work to be done, or his papers to move. So this not only has had an impact as far as governance is concerned, let us look at what's happened to other limbs of the state. We've last week only discussed the judicial institution in the case of the resolution for removal of one of the honorable judges. I don't want to repeat that. But the fact of the matter is, lower judiciary owes its accountability to the higher judiciary. The higher you go, the accountability norms get weakened. And therefore, when they get weakened, that this is one area where people can get away, and therefore the accountability norms are not there. I said it last week, and I have no hesitation in repeating it today, sir. I've been a close observer of that institution for the last 34 years. What was unthinkable when I joined the bar, I find a large number of rumors almost every time you happen to visit somebody who's actively concerned with the institution. Media. The whole concept and the idea of giving a free media was freedom from control, freedom from any kind of state regulation, and we are proud of an independent media to that effect. But then in the last few years, we've started getting whispers, and then a number of us had to face the reality. The whole menace of paid news. Media, in fact, has one greater function to perform. Media has one greater function to perform. Industry may only help in developing the economy. Media shapes the human mind. And the shaping of the human mind also gets polluted, because you have to buy packages, the reader is then misled. The right to be informed, the right to knowledge, as far as the reader is concerned or the viewer is concerned, gets vitiated because of the media packages. And therefore, I think for each one of us, we created specialized investigative agencies.